You're listening to ProdCast, the personal productivity podcast from CRM Audio with Matthew C. Anderson and Joel Lindstrom. This episode of ProdCast is sponsored by Maplytics. Maplytics by Analogic is a market-leading, certified for Microsoft Dynamics 365 geo-analytic mapping app. Maplytics empowers users with powerful map visualizations and routing capabilities within Dynamics CRM to drive better sales, improve business processes, and engage right customers at the right time. Maplytics now works with Dynamics 365 version 9 and Dynamics 365 app for mobile and tablet. Analogic is a leading Microsoft Gold Dynamics CRM ISV, delivering best-in-class Dynamics 365 solutions, as well as cost-effective and high-quality programming services.
Hello, Joel. I'm hoping that in this episode you might be able to help me out with something.
How can I help you, Matthew?
Well, I think the best way you could help me out is to weigh in a little bit on when the right time is to ask for help. Especially having started a new position pretty recently, I'm having to relearn who I go to for help with something and when the right time is to go for help. So I thought that could be a fun topic to kind of go through here, the when to and when not to go for help.
Right. So that's an interesting topic that ties into something that I've been thinking about and talking to other people about, which is I just got back from the Microsoft MVP Summit. And I always see the new MVPs, and they're the ones that look a little bit nervous. They feel like, do I really deserve to be here? Get that imposter syndrome going.
Yeah.
And, I think when you start a job, there's a lot of times self-imposed nerves that I don't want to look like I don't know what I'm doing. So I'm going to try and figure it out. But then once you're comfortable in your role and feel like you paid your dues and deserve to be there, then I don't have trouble asking people for help. But sometimes it's knowing who to ask for help. So that is a challenge. I think the first thing I look at is, are there any... I don't want to be the guy who gets the "let me Google that for you" thing back. So I want to make sure I've always checked available sources, and if it's something that I need to know how to do something, I'll do a Google search first to see if I can find or figure it out. But then if I realize that I'm stuck and I can't go any further, there's a lot of people who know more than I do on a lot of things, and so then I'll reach out to them.
Yeah. So one of the areas for me that I've been trying to ask a lot for is when I don't really know where to start internally. I don't want to be reinventing the wheel on things that another person in a similar role has put together already, but I don't necessarily know even where to go start looking for those types of things. So that's been a big one for me as I've been getting going here, where I just ask that question of, have you done this before, or where did you start, or where can I even go, even if they don't have the actual ready-made answer for me for the type of asset I'm looking for.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So how do you, Microsoft's a huge company, and how do you start figuring out who your advisors should be? How do you figure out who you should ask for what?
So, it's been a combination of things. So it's been talking with a lot of other people who were kind of new and onboarding at the same time, and figuring out where it is that they have been learning from other people. For each of the different kind of regional teams, or if we're part of a specialist team, there are lots of different places to go or cages to rattle to get that type of information. But frankly, the use of Yammer as well as Teams has a lot of searchable information where there's been a thread on a lot of these topics, and from there I can see even if it's something from 6 months ago, a year ago, I can see who it was that was doing or talking about that before. And at least so far, when I've clicked through to either IM somebody to find out what they did or where they ended up or what their ultimate solution was for that, they've been really willing to kind of respond and give me whatever info they had.
Right. So one thing I find can be really helpful for you to get answers when you need help is be willing to help other people. Because if you're the guy who always asks for help, but you're not available when people raise their hands saying they need help, you're not likely to get help. And that's where kind of paying it forward, you're building up a credit in their bank account, if you will, of you've helped me, so I'm going to be more willing to take your call and help you.
Yeah, and along a similar vein on that, just being truly thankful when people do help you out, and whether the way you're showing thanks is by returning the favor and helping out either someone by paying it forward or that person you just asked for help, but just having them know it really is appreciated and it wasn't just a purely transactional type of conversation.
Right. So what about when the shoe's on the other foot and somebody's asking you for help? Do you have any things you try and do to when people ask you for something? For example, I've got certain rules that I do. If somebody asks me how to do something, I don't just want to do it for them. I want to help them to do it themselves so that they learn how to do it. Yeah.
So I fall into a similar category around that. I mean, oftentimes I like to provide assets, whether it's an example of something similar that I've done, or I'll put together a lot of kind of simple reusable tools that I'll have. I build out presentations quite a bit, and I've had a rubric that I've kind of built out over time for how I assemble those and organize them, and help the discussion flow go along. And that's something where if I can share that with somebody and just give it to them as something they can work with to go build it up themselves, and maybe I'm spending 5-10 minutes on the phone helping them understand what it is, because getting a document template sent over to you on its own isn't always the most useful. But if you get a little coaching on here's what it is, here's when you use it, here's why you use it, and how it solves the problem you're looking for, that's where I like to be. The other thing is the being able to help people discover things. I never like to be the person to kind of steal the excitement out of something. Just because I know how to do a thing, or I've done a specific thing before, doesn't mean I should have this high and mighty position where anybody who hasn't done it isn't as I'll see people take them down a peg, like, oh, you mean you haven't done that before? What's your deal? I did that 2 years ago. Like, I never want to be that guy when I'm doing it, even if it's something I've done 100 times before. Like, everybody has their first time they're doing it sometime. And just kind of understanding that and appreciating that is really important for me.
Right. Some people feel threatened by either, maybe in your job, you're worried this young guy joining the company with all this energy will steal my job, or I'll get knocked down a peg or two. I don't look at it that way. I look at, by helping others, you could help them be more successful. Remember, you weren't always the expert at what you know now, and it was because of people helping you, and so it's repaying that. The other thing is, I hate it when I ask for something to someone and they say just no, or I don't know, or ignore the email. Even if you're busy, what I like to do is, and I worked in a large company, not as big as Microsoft, but even so, there's a lot of moving pieces and a lot of different people, and not everybody knows on it. So when I get a question that I don't know the answer to, or I'm not well suited to answer, I never, unless I absolutely have to say, I don't know what to do, I'll say, I don't know, but let's ask Bob. And then maybe start a conversation with Bob and transition it off. As an MVP, I get asked a lot of questions from people about what's Microsoft's direction on this, or what is, what's going on with portals. And I don't know all that stuff, but I know people who know that stuff, either on the Microsoft team or other Hitachi people. So what I'll try and do is take that question, maybe respond to it and copy in somebody who does know, and say, Arvind, can you answer this question? and start the conversation that way. But I'm trying not to take ownership of the problem. I'm trying to direct them to find an answer, enable them to find an answer, and then wipe it off my plate, and knowing that they've gotten the help they need.
Yeah, well, and building those connections isn't a bad thing either. I mean, having someone come to you and look at you as Joel the answer man isn't nearly as powerful as, Joel helped connect me to this person who got me everything I needed, even though I came back with 10 questions. And that way you're not wasting additional time trying to play, middleman to that to be able to, take credit.
Right. Sometimes, and I've probably been guilty of this in the past, sometimes people, especially technical people, can feel like their value is the knowledge that they have. But, I've found a lot of enjoyment just from helping other people grow and become more competent. I love seeing people on my team who are now able to handle much more complex scenarios because they've learned it themselves, and they don't have to keep coming to me to ask me what to do.
Yeah. Well, and I think, that if I just think about it this way, that's so much of things like the, blogging and tip of the day and those types of things. Those are all about sharing those resources, giving credit to the people who are coming up with them, and helping build resources so you don't have to go find that super smart person, because even the most super smart person doesn't really have all the answers. So, the more we can collectively come together and have those types of resources that grow, and people know they can go there and take a look or ask a question or get an understanding of who they might be able to go to. Looking back at your first question for me in this episode, that's the kind of thing that really ends up being helpful.
Right. Okay. Well, that's good. So yes, I will help you, Matthew, and definitely go help other people too. So you're the newbie, but you're not going to be the newbie for long, and you got to help other people too.
Dang right.
All right. So second topic, and this is something that along with email, the second thing that kind of frustrates me with Outlook is calendaring. And we talked about how to make Outlook more productive. I've got several rules for my calendar that I follow, and I'm interested to know what rules. I'm not talking about automated rules, although you could set up some automated rules. But
sure.
For example, I make it a practice that when I've got things like recurring meetings, or I have things on my calendar on a day that overlap when I had two things, and I have a rule that there can only be one winner for each time slot. Because that first thing is that prevents me from having conflicts. But even if it's a call that is just more of a reminder thing, I find it a lot more stressful to look at my calendar and it looks like I need to be 2 or 3 places at the same time.
Yeah.
So only one at a time. I'm also still trying, although failing, to proactively block off breathing room, focus time, whatever you want to call it. I'm not always as successful. I admire some of my colleagues that have a daily block for lunch. I've tried that. It doesn't work for me because people realize, Joel's got a daily lunch block. So they'll still send invites, and partly my fault for accepting those, but sometimes you just have to. So what kind of rules do you calendar by?
Yeah, so one thing I try to do is anytime it's a meeting that I own, I will be really rigid in trying to defend that time if somebody else is trying to schedule something at the same time. To the first thing you brought up, the one at a time rule, I really do like it. Sometimes for me, I will have 2 or 3 things that are overlapping on a given day, but I won't do that if I'm the owner of a meeting, because that's important to not just kind of push that around. Now, the reason, as I think about it, of why I'll have sometimes 2 or 3 meetings at a time showing up on my calendar is there's some awareness of the fact that the conversation is happening. And in the case of, a last-minute meeting cancellation, I have kind of that next thing in line that I might go do. And, looking back, I know I've talked about my kind of weekly ritual of going through my calendar. What I do is I pick what the winner is going to be for each time slot as I'm looking forward into that week. So while I may have 3 things that show up in Outlook on my calendar, I've got already in my mind's eye and written down in my physical, log for that week, this is what the winner is going to be. And for me, that's nice because then I own that, I control it. And whereas, if somebody forwards a meeting invite to me, all of a sudden I could have 2 or 3 things showing up that I haven't responded to, I didn't want, I had no intention of going to, but now it's out there, versus knowing full well what I'm going to do based on what I've physically, kind of planned out.
Yeah. The other thing, and this is not unique to me. I've read it in multiple books, but one thing I find when I'm scheduling the meeting, I like to go with time intervals other than 30 and 60 minutes. 30 and 60 minutes are the default, but if you do that and you do every meeting at 30 or 60 minutes, you're by definition not giving yourself any breathing room before the next one starts. Mm-hmm. And so most meetings don't have to be an hour long. And a lot of meetings don't even have to be half an hour long. So schedule some 15 or 20-minute meetings, and you build yourself in some breathing room. The only thing I find with doing that sometimes, if it doesn't start on the top or bottom of the hour, sometimes when you look at your calendar, it's hard to tell exactly when you're supposed to be there.
Yeah, and I completely agree with that. I love scheduling the 20-minute meeting, but the 20-minute meeting that starts at 5 after or 10 after just does not work. People get confused. You end up losing some of that time. So, yeah, love that, though.
I like to throw people off and schedule a 13 or 23-minute meeting. The other thing that I find kind of fun, I don't know why I find this fun, but you go to a meeting and then you realize I never accepted that invitation. Go and decline the invitation just to mess with the organizer.
Joel, I'm sure you have a reputation for your odd meeting starting times and your last minute declining, even if you're going.
Right.
Though I will say, there's been people that will consistently schedule stuff and start at like the like a 2:15 meeting that's over at 2:45, so they'll still do it for the half an hour. And, people end up talking about that kind of thing and give a reputation for being the person that mucks up everybody else's calendar because they can't find times that are available for everybody then. Right.
Yeah. So, you don't want to be the oddball, but yeah, I think so. And I mean, I get a lot of invitations where I'm not leading the meeting and I'm, or the zillion different project status calls. So, what I like to do is just go through, and if there are days when I can't do it, I will decline that instance of it instead of just putting on autopilot. That way I can get a reasonable idea of what time I have available. Right. Do you do any kind of categorization of your meetings like you do with your emails?
No, I don't do any of that. Everything is one boring color across my calendar unless I'm out of office.
Is that color blue?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Default boring blue.
Well, this has been a productive meeting, Matthew.
I think so too, sir.
All right. Stay productive. This has been ProdCast, the personal productivity podcast from CRM Audio with Matthew C. Anderson and Joel Lindstrom. Follow Matthew on Twitter at MC Anderson or on his blog, connectingthedata.com. Follow Joel Lindstrom on Twitter at Joel Lindstrom. ProdCast and the rest of the CRM Audio Network are available on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, and anywhere else fine podcasts are available. This podcast is a production of Dynamic Podcasts, LLC.